but not on the eve of being deployed with all of the men under you who you're responsible for the first time to the theater of war. That's what makes this controversial. There's no question he did that. His own letter acknowledging he knew he was likely to get a deployment notice to Iraq months before he retired shows you he retired, left his unit, knowing he was abandoning those men. What is the truth about Minnesota Governor and now Democratic vice presidential pick Tim Walz and his military service record? Questions have been swirling, including allegations that Mr. Walz abandoned his fellow troops in their greatest time of need. Even claims of stolen valor. Yesterday on this program, I spoke with a Minnesota National Guard veteran who has been sounding the alarm on this story for years. Tom Behrens, who took over the post Tim Walz left when he retired just as his unit, the unit under his command, was deploying to Iraq, was on this program yesterday. And Tom made some stunning allegations. For what it's worth, the Harris-Walz campaign and the complicit media would have you believe this entire controversy is just a bunch of nonsense. But today we're going to bring you the receipts. Here's what we know. Days after the September 11th, 2001 attack on our nation, Mr. Walz re-enlisted in the National Guard for a 6-year commitment. He would later claim it was only 4. Alpha News, there in Minnesota, they've obtained the paperwork. It was 6. So I don't know why he's misleading about that, but he signed up to stay in until 2007. 2007, not 2005. In late 2003, he deployed with his unit to Italy in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. Operation Enduring Freedom is also known as the war in Afghanistan. He never went to Afghanistan. He never saw active combat, nor was he part of Enduring Freedom. Again, that name is used for the war in Afghanistan. He was in a support role in Italy. In the military, these words matter. In February of 2005, okay, we're flash forwarding now 2 years from the Italy service, he filed paperwork with the Federal Election Commission to run for Congress. 1 month later, in March, his own campaign acknowledged before he retired from the National Guard, he was still in the National Guard, that he knew he might be getting deployed to Iraq. They put out a press release titled, quote, Walz still planning to run for Congress despite possible call to duty in Iraq. And indeed, this is something that is done. Sometimes active duty National Guardsmen also running for office. At that time, he said, quote, as Command Sergeant Major, I have a responsibility not only to ready my battalion for Iraq, but also to serve if called on. That's him, months before he retired. After he'd already said, I'm thinking about running for Congress. I'm dedicated to serving my country to the best of my ability, whether that's in Washington, D.C. or in Iraq. 2 months later, in May of 2005, Mr. Walz, the same one who 6 weeks earlier said, quote, I have a responsibility to serve if called on, retired from the National Guard, effectively telling those who served under him, good luck in Iraq. I won't be there. This was years before his commitment was due to end. Now the media points to the fact that his unit did not receive the official alert orders to deploy to Iraq until July 2005, 2 months after Walz officially retired. But that doesn't change the fact that he clearly knew that a deployment was a possibility at the time he decided to bail. Nor does it change the fact that Walz retired early. Those are facts that are not in dispute. He retired early, even by his own measure, where he's claiming he was allowed to retire at some point in 2005. It's fine. They do retire early sometimes. It's not totally unusual for someone in the service to retire early once they've, surpassed the time that they committed to. But this was a re-up, the 6 years, but not on the eve of being deployed with all of the men under you who you're responsible for the first time to the theater of war. That's what makes this controversial. There's no question he did that. His own letter acknowledging he knew he was likely to get a deployment notice to Iraq months before he retired shows you he retired, left his unit, knowing he was abandoning those men. That is a fact that our guest, Tom Behrens, yesterday took real issue with.
Everybody was in shock because senior NCOs don't do that. I mean, that you basically train for years and years. You're with your soldiers. Your soldiers are literally like your kids almost. I mean, you've watched them grow up. You've helped them shoot guns and learn how to do the radio stuff and, fix wounds if you can and different things. And then all of a sudden when it's time to go do your thing with that, you quit. I mean, that just absolutely was just disgusting.
His former unit would eventually deploy for 22 months at the height of some of the worst violence Iraq has ever seen. And at least 3 members of that unit were killed. And where was Tim Walz? He was sitting in D.C.